So what we do is to place the model in there, we'll use a 24-70, and it gives us the ability to pan in a little bit, zoom in a little bit, and slightly throw the background out of focus so it becomes a background and not included in the image. So I'm James Nader, I'm a fashion advertising photographer, and I've been doing that for nigh on 20 years now. There was a stint where I went out to be a creative director in an agency, which allows me to do web development and all sorts of things that keeps me on page 1 of Google. I've worked for many clients on many locations. The most recent big campaign that I did was in Iceland before lockdown. That was a 3-week campaign shooting for a calendar for a German biscuit company. My style of shooting is what attracts clients, and my clients book me for the style I produce now, which is slightly avant-garde, it's cinematic, and it's an eclectic mix of locations and lighting and clothing. I started shooting film many years ago. I started with F2s and F3 Nikons. Never really worked with Canons, I stuck with Nikons. I also used Hasselblad at the time, and you could often see me carrying bags of film through the airports, you know, going through the x-rays and customs with clients, shot pictures and shoot pictures in my hands or in special light-proof bags. And then early doors I made the transition with the Nikon Coolpix 3.5 megapixel camera was my first digital camera, and that is where I've moved from today to what I do now, which is known for shooting with DSLRs and medium format digital cameras. I use not a great deal of equipment because, you know, I've got a core set of equipment that I have here. I'm going to just run through with you. If I need anything extra, it's always good to go to a company like YONGNUO, who will be able to look after your needs as you require, and that's pretty much what I'll be doing moving forward. I have hired equipment in the past. I do tend to like my own equipment, but you can never afford to have everything because some of the equipment is specialist in what you do, and that sometimes sits on the shelf. I had a Hasselblad for years and it just became null and void, so I got rid of it. And I have borrowed equipment such as Fuji GFX 50S for my Icelandic campaign from Fuji Direct. That was a fantastic bit of kit. This is my go-to camera, and it's not everybody's choice because many people go into mirrorless cameras, and I do have 3 mirrorless cameras at the moment outside of this one, but this is the one camera that I choose to shoot with. It's still the same megapixels as everybody else, but it still feels a bit more of a SLR format. And what I mean by that, with Sony's and some of the like Fuji's, you've got a menu driven system to access what you need, whereas this, you can set your basics from here and everything else is controlled from the top of the camera. So when I'm shooting, I can run around the camera like this, I can dial in things, I can look like this, and it's very, for me personally, it is very close to hand, and I can virtually use this eyes closed. So the Nikon D850, standard lens I normally put on it is a 24-70, I'll come on to that, but at the moment I'm using a 14 to 24mm Nikon lens. And the reason for that is because it gives a distorted view in terms of the way it looks at a picture. So for example, if you've got a full figure here and you move your camera up, then you're going to get a bigger head and smaller feet. And if you can shoot from low down like that, you'll get bigger feet and smaller heads. And really good, for example, if you've got a model like next week, I'll be shooting on location at a tropical location in the UK, if you can get one. But I've already done the recce. But the idea is we're going to have great big sombrero hats, we're going to have fashionable items, we're going to be low down with the palm trees in the background. And what I'll be doing is trying to get this shoulder look, the hat across there, looking down like this, and low angle, which will give small hat and everything and bigger feet, but great aspect to the backgrounds. And the good thing about this is it actually shows more of the background. For example, some of my campaigns, which I'll put into the clip now, you'll see that having wider angle lenses actually is benefit to seeing the location. Why go to a location and not see it? So that is the Nikon and the 14 to 24mm lens. So the other lens that I've used, and this is my staple lens for a lot of the shoots that I've done, and I've been using this lens, the same Nikon lens, for nigh on 14 years. It's a Nikon 24-70mm f2.8. It's my workhorse. You can see it's a bit battered and weathered and torn. The reason why I use a 24-70 is when I'm on location, for example, then The models are booked, the location's booked. You go all the way to Iceland, or all these beautiful locations have been in the last 5 years around Europe. But the thing is, the client wants to see the model in the environment. What is the point of me putting a 105mm lens or an 85mm lens and throwing it right out? They don't want that. So what we do is we place the model in there. We'll use a 24-70, and it gives us the ability to pan in a little bit, zoom in a little bit, and slightly throw the background out of focus so it becomes a background and not included in the image. And that, what we do is we throw a little bit of lighting onto that to make it a little bit more like a theatrical background. I use this 95%, nearly 99% of the time I've used this lens. Even in a studio I'll use the same lens. It's the same go-to lens for me. But I am now starting to shoot slightly differently, as I said, with the 14-24mm. The other lens that I have, which I think I bought last year, not really had a chance because of COVID, but this is the Nikon 105 1.4 lens, f1.4. That is a very fast lens. So for example, if I am on location and we go from the main shot, which I just mentioned, the 24-70, then what I will do is I will pop this lens on, and I'll bring it in a bit closer. So this lens is very good for close-ups, portraiture, and if you want to do 3/4 of more of a distance, then you'll throw the background right out so it'll become blurred, which is really great to be able to pick the model out and to make us stand out from the background. It's very fast as well, so you can work in very low lighting. It's very clean. It's an automatic lens. You can use it manually. Very bright when you look through it, and I really love it. It's the lens to go forward for me. So I could go on about the actual lenses on and on and on, and yeah, I have got an 85mm, I have got a 50mm, but I don't really use those. In fact, they're put in the cupboards behind. I haven't used them for a while, and I have got a 70-200mm f2.8 Nikon lens as well, which I use very, very rarely, especially work I've been doing over the years. Even when I've been using the Fuji GFX or the Hasselblad, I've stuck within that same type of range of lens distances and zoom. For example, with the Hasselblad, I had the zoom lens, which gave me the same options. Then when I went with the Iceland trip, I used the Fuji GFX 50S, and they're wide angle to 60mm. I can't remember the actual range, but that was the same thing. So all of those lenses that I use give me the same effect of location included, slightly out of focus, and it gives you that absolute feeling of a picture that tells a story. One of the things that I used to use within film, but I used to use all the time, you had to, but what I use quite rarely now is the Sekonic light meter. If you're using flash, it'll give you a proper flash reading, which is great. Using LEDs, not so much. It does take the reading for you, but I'm pretty much able to control the light within the camera. Cameras are giant light meters anyway. But a light meter, I still use a light meter on occasion, which when I'm using flash or mixing light. But essentially what I do, you can take your reading, as you know, with flash, or you can take your ambient light readings. But when you're mixing, it's a bit different. But essentially what I do is I go bang, 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 bang. And all these different readings in my mind over the years, I realized that they create a picture of light, how it's falling. I see it in black and white because that's where I came from. Black and white levels of lighting gives me an idea of the gradient of lighting, how it's falling onto the subject, and that takes a few years of practice to get into that mode, but essentially that's what I do. Another bit of lighting that I like to use, and it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I come from film lighting, so ARRI, hot lights, blondes, redheads and stuff like that. And I've used that over the years to illuminate my subjects, looking for the sweet spot. But I've managed to take that into photography these days in a portable bag where I use LED lights. This is lit with an LED light, so I'm using a bit of a warm balance to this. But I used a range of different lights that I keep in my bag, small ones and big ones. And you couldn't really do this with film, but you can definitely do it with digital. If you haven't got LED in your system of shooting, you really need to. So I use something like this. So this here, you can control the colour and the density with the controls on the back, and you put two of these batteries in like so. You need two of them, only got one, but you put two of them, charge them up, and they'll last for ages. But it's a great portable system because three of those are the same. You can create the same 3-point system, but this here is a very bright light. You can shoot on a 60th, an 80th, a 1/25th, whatever you want, and you can control your ISO. You can get a beautiful look. So definitely see if you can get the equivalent. The equivalent are the rectangle ones. They've got about 160 LED bulbs on there, a couple of batteries like that, or even this one, which I'll put a link in the bio, something like that. That's a fantastic bit of kit. I've just bought that, 54 quid from Amazon. This is about £100 from Amazon or eBay, but you'd have to track this one down. In terms of portable lighting kit, that's the kit that I use for LED and ambient lighting. You go into a room, you can easily mix this light with the light that's already there. That's what I do all the time. So a lot of my shots are lit with these. If you're not bored already, then hopefully you'll like this. So another portable kit, bit of kit that I take with me. I take 3 of these along wherever I go, whether it's fashion, advertising, location, whatever. Take 3 of these. These don't cost a lot of money. I think 3 of them are about 180 quid as a kit. 3 of these in your kit are tiny. So for example, you can put them in a bag, you put 3 in a bag, put them on stands. They power up, you can put batteries on the back of them. They're absolutely fantastic. But you can still get the same as the other lights. They're not as powerful as the other lights, but they're pretty good. If you're doing portraiture, fashion or anything, you can still do the split lighting, Rembrandt lighting, butterfly lighting, avant-garde lighting. So that's something else I take in my portable kit. So for flash, what flash do I use? And a lot of the time when I've been on location, you'll see in some of the pictures are included in this video. A lot of the shots that I've done on location are using flash, not so much the LED lightings. And the reason for that is if you're trying to overpower the sun or the elements, then it's best to have the power, and the power comes from a flash unit. So what do I use? Well, I've used a range of equipment over the years, and it's not a snobby thing or anything like that. It's about what works effectively for me. So I've used a range of equipment, but what I've really come to love and work with all the time because its reliability is Profoto. So you have to either have the money to go out and buy one of those, but you can aspire to buy it. But there are lots of other brands that do something equivalent. And what this does is TTL metering. So these here are the Profoto B1Xs. What we've got are, put that there, okay. Well, essentially what we've got here, I've got 2 of these heads. They are 500, but you can control the power fantastically well. So switching it on there, you can see you control it up or down, like so. Yeah, so power up, modeling lights on or off, and you can fire it. There you go, like that. So these are very powerful and very maneuverable, but this, you can put this against the sunlight, or these, you can put them against the sunlight and you overpower the sunlight. So what you can create is a very theatrical, cinematic looking background. And I think the great advocate of that style of work, Annie Leibovitz, she does quite a bit of that, where she takes the lighting on location and she'll shoot with that and overpower the background. It creates that theatrical, cinematic look where the background looks almost like it's been painted. So hopefully that's just a little bit about my immediate working kit. I do have a range of other accessories and cameras that I use. So for example, I used a Fuji X-T3. I use a 14mm lens on that. It's a crop sensor camera, but that's for me personally, although I'm shooting video with it. I'm shooting on a Sony 6500 there, and I've got a Sony A7R III, and we use Samyang lenses on those. And when I need to upgrade, I bring my mate in, he's got a red camera. So, you know, these days I am doing more directing, I am shooting more video and doing a lot more editing. But, you know, if I upgrade, I'll go and bring somebody in and I'll use a red camera and we'll shoot with that. So although I've talked about the equipment that I use, you know, it's how I work. So there's no right and wrong way of using the equipment that you've got, but I would say some of the great lenses are the ones that you use and you're comfortable with. So for me, it's a 24-70mm lens, 105 lens, or the equivalents of those lenses within the Fuji or the Hasselblad or whatever medium format camera I come up with. Using the best lens suited to you and your style of photography is the best way forward. You become comfortable with your style and your process, and this allows you to use the lenses. You become comfortable with the ranges and the effects that it gives you. That's what I would suggest that you do. Don't get too involved in, I need this lens and that lens, because it's not necessarily about the lens that makes you a better photographer. The best equipment doesn't make you a better photographer. In fact, you could take a bad camera with a reasonable lens and get some brilliant pictures if you know what you want to be. You have to be creative. If you're a creative person, then you can make anything work. So essential accessories that you need to take are what you can think about. I mean, for me, most essential things: gaffer tape, clips, safety pins, all the elements that you need to put in your bag, extra batteries, I suppose extra power units. Sometimes I've taken a power unit on location that be able to power up everything else. So for example, if you don't have electricity on location, then on one of my shoots I used this big power unit. You can put 4 plugs in and power up 4 LED lights. I used it within the ice caves, which I'll show you now. And you know, protecting it from water was a difficult thing to do, but actually it powered up quite a few LED lights. But at the same time, you could plug your USBs in, you could charge up your power banks, you can charge up your phones, and you can keep your equipment. That needed a charge and it would last quite a bit of time. In fact, I don't use it so much anywhere in studios, but always on location you can take it with you. I suppose other things you need to do depends on the type of photography that you do. So for example, you know, reflectors, V-flat, umbrellas, anything that you need for your photography, plus all the little elements that you need to go with it, you know, extra cards, card safes, so you protect them from damage, water and dust, little things like that. And you can, you know, there's too many items that I use that I could list here, but I can put them into a document or into a link underneath. So over the last few years, I've been using a smartphone, or in my particular case, it's the iPhone. I love the iPhone. I've got the 12 Pro Max at the moment, and I use that. It's really great quality, but I use that for all of my what would have been Polaroid backgrounds. So I will use it for composition, I'll use it for positioning, I will use it for lighting, I'll use it for environment, and I'll put all of the information together, and I pull all of that together on the phone. I can flick through. In the old days, I'll use a Polaroid and Polaroid book. So I'd take the Polaroids, cut them out, put them into a book, and then we'd assign models to that background. We'd then assign clothing to the models on that background, and you make notes of every film roll that you shot. You know, you'd name them all, 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, and then they would go to lab and clip tested. The iPhone for me has taken over my P7-100. It's an older Nikon camera, which is about 1080p. I used to have that strapped around me. You can see it on some of the shots. I would use that all of the time to document what was going on, to look at the shot in the beginning, but now that's been superseded by the iPhone. The camera's actually in that cupboard there. Settings to master when shooting portraits or fashion photography, or essentially people photography. So one of the tips I would suggest that I use for mine, so coming from the film background, I would always have to use a light meter, take the exact reading, then underexpose by a 1/2 to 1 stop. So when I went to the lab and I could push it, I'd be able to keep some of the detail, because if it overexposed, there's no detail in the highlights. What I've learned to do now is I still do the same thing in digital. So what I will do is I still take a light reading, whether it's light meter or camera. I will always dial in an extra f-stop to underexpose a background. Underexposing the background for me will give me a little bit more dynamic range. So I know most cameras have got a lot of dynamic range. However, the way I do that increases the dynamic range. So you're not muting the colors, or you're not damaging the picture by underexposing it. But when you take it into your workflow, you can pull that detail back out in the shadows, and it creates a different type of perspective, more of a richer dynamic range. That's just a process that I use. I'm not saying it's the right way, but it's my way. So you can learn that in some of the videos that are coming up later. So using the ARRI lights and the red heads, when you focus down the beam with the mirror on the back, it would illuminate the face, but it creates a sweet spot here. If you got it in the right place, this would all become very smooth and silky, great for retouching now, and it's the same technique I use now. Thanks for listening to me. I hope it's been informative. Thanks to Video for offering me this collaboration opportunity, and if I don't see you on this one, I'll see you on the next one. Over and out.